And a good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens, Director at WEIU. My co-host is Cade Slaughter. Welcome, Cade.
That's right. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And today's guests are Mindy Spencer, Vice President for University Advancement here at Eastern Illinois. Welcome, Mindy.
Thank you for having me.
And Jonathan McKenzie. He's been on before. It's been a little bit back, but Foundation Executive Officer and Director of Plan Giving.
Yep.
Is that correct? I'm going to have you scoot up a little bit close to that bring that in there, Mike or Jonathan.
Yep.
And we'll get going. Well, appreciate you both being in today. I guess for people who don't have a clue or don't know, let's just talk a little bit about what the Advancement Office does and on a day-to-day and what each of your duties are.
Sure, I can talk a little bit about that. So advancement is the connections we make with alumni and donors and stakeholders. So homecoming is a great example, right? We had a lot of alumni on campus. The Alumni Services Office is part of advancement. We had donors on campus, welcoming those donors in, helping them make gifts, stewarding them, which is thanking them and keeping them engaged. That is part of advancement. An important part of advancement is the plan giving side, which Jonathan can talk a little bit more about. I also want to highlight communications. So communications and sending newsletters out to our donors. We do a alumni magazine. That's part of advancement. How we're keeping people connected to the stories of EIU, that's a really critical part of advancement. So do you want to talk a little more about the foundation and plan giving?
Absolutely. Well, I get to work in the plan giving space, so it's largely folks who want to make a bequest intention, a trust, or some kind of an estate commitment for a future time. And on the foundation side, we also manage all of those charitable gifts for the benefit of the university. So all those questions that come up on how to use an endowment, maybe working with a donor on the criteria and helping them facilitate the development of that gift agreement, all that's happening over on the foundation side.
Okay.
So how has the foundation evolved over the years in terms of its mission and its scope of its activities necessarily? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I would say 1953 the foundation started. It was a very small operation. The first endowment fund that we had was the Livingston Lord Scholarship. And it was actually an endowment created through the Alumni Association for the university that we started managing. And from that, things grew out. Endowments were just a few $1,000s at the time, and now the minimum to start one is $25,000 to have a meaningful scholarship as a result of that. The endowment, I'm not even sure what we stood at the first year in 1953. It couldn't have been more than a few $1,000s in assets, and now we're at around $120 million in assets. And growing, and the endowment pool is about $95 million of that. So a lot has changed. There's a lot more management, a lot more just things and stuff, especially when you think about the number of endowment funds themselves. We have 720 different endowment funds.
That's all?
So
Right.
So it's a full-time endeavor just to help manage and facilitate those.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing that I think has changed on the foundation side and will keep changing and evolving is even how donors are giving and what donors give to. So the means they can use to give. 5 years ago, I don't know that we were talking about donor advised funds like we are today. Donors are much more savvy and informed about how they can give, and they're also looking to give more based on impact versus loyalty. So there's some shifts in how people give, which then impacts the work we do on fund agreements. So really a lot of our work is helping to make our donors' dreams come true, while also aligning with what the university needs.
Yeah, because one of the questions I was going to ask or want to ask is if someone does give a gift to Eastern, what's it do? Or can they designate it for something specific? Can you go into some details there?
Yeah, they can. So donors can give with restrictions. We do set up gift agreements for many of our funds over the $25,000 level. Sometimes we have unrestricted gifts, which are actually the most powerful way donors can impact the university, because then that gives us more flexibility with the ever-changing environment of higher ed. But if a donor wants to give something that will impact athletics and help create a new facility, we can work with them. If a donor wants to create a new fellowship in a certain department and have it aligned to help on a very specific focus area like clinical psychology, we can do that too. So a big part of our job on the advancement side is having a broad understanding of the needs of the university so that we can help direct those gifts in the right way. Having just come out of homecoming, I did have a lot of conversations with donors and alumni boards, and I also told them part of our job is also being able to navigate telling donors no. Because I think all of us who have worked in this space have had to tell donors, what you're talking about is not actually something we can do, or the impact you're wanting to make at the giving level you're thinking of, we can't do that. But why don't we pivot and think through something else? So we really do get to be very creative with our donors.
So when you're talking to donors at homecoming and they have something they want to do and they can't, you realize it doesn't really match what EIU is doing or any department on campus. How do you kind of get to that pivot point nicely so they're there? Because there is, like, you think you wouldn't want to offend them, but you also have to tell them the truth. So
yeah,
do you have a style or a plan there?
Transparency.
Okay.
So a lot of our work,
okay.
a lot of our work is relationship building.
Okay.
So I have found over the course of my career that just being transparent with donors and talking with them, and telling them it is a great idea. But here is where we're at with this certain unit. How about we pivot this way? Would this align with what you're wanting to do? So I have found that having those conversations early and often and truly being a partner with the donor, being their champion through this, helping them understand the budgetary needs of the unit, is always impactful, and it's always appreciated.
Okay.
So can you discuss any recent campaigns or any specific fundraising efforts that have been particularly utilized?
So that's a great question. I have been in my role for, I think it is 8 months officially. One of the reasons that advancement has done some pivoting, why I was hired was because we're starting work on a campaign. So it has been a long time since there's been a campaign. I think it ended in 2012. Mm-hmm. So we are doing all of the work that we need to do to get ready for a campaign. And so that includes, we have done some preliminary conversations with donors on what campaign themes might be. We are working on looking at what is the staffing we need, what are the resources we need, what are some policies and procedures and forms. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, so we are getting campaign ready. We are actually in the planning phase for a campaign now, so that's why I said, great question. Where we're looking at is we likely will go into a silent phase for a campaign in about 2 years. Typically, it's then another 2 years before we do a big public campaign where it's all the pomp and circumstance and celebrations. And so there are other things that are going into being campaign ready right now.
So that will be a major fund drive then from EIU's point. And you're going to have a name to it and all that stuff?
Yes, we will. Yes, there will be a theme. We will have themes for the university and for all of the colleges, and we'll have many ways that alumni can give. But we do have some preliminary themes we're thinking through.
Jonathan, I want to go back to you on the 720 endowments you said on that.
Yep.
So does that mean that you specifically are working with a lot of those to get those lined up for scholarships for students, or where the gift money goes from? That seems like it would take almost your entire year's work would always be continuously doing this, not the same thing, but always managing those funds and making sure it's done correctly.
Yeah, it's a cooperative effort. So we're in partnership with all of the departments and programs across the university. And so those 720 endowment funds have very unique criteria for each one. And so we're working with all the departments. If a scholarship is assigned, say, to communication studies majors, that department, that school is actually facilitating the awarding of that scholarship. But there may be questions about a criteria in there where we may need to go back to a donor and have a conversation. So it's very much just an ongoing process. Most of the scholarships are pretty well set. The departments know how to facilitate and manage the agreements. But occasionally I'll be brought in to ask to arbitrate what a criteria means, or maybe we need to go back to a donor and have a conversation. The program has changed and we need to evolve that document. So those are the kinds of things that I'm working on.
All right. go ahead.
So what does the process look like for the donors specifically, if you want to go like more into the specifics of like how to really donate necessarily? I'm just kind of curious on that.
So it depends on if we know them yet or not. Some of the
course.
work that goes into this and what we're looking at is growing our pipelines and looking at who should we know that we don't. And so sometimes that will look like us reaching out. We know we're going to be in Phoenix, for example. We have a big alumni population in Phoenix. We might reach out and ask for meetings. Sometimes people will self-nominate themselves to be donors, and that's great.
Of course.
But once we have established that they want to give and that they are interested in making a philanthropic investment, it really is a conversation with the donor to identify some priorities that they care about, working with our academic leaders on how does this align with what they need. And I should say it's not just the colleges. We also have non-academic departments like athletics and like student affairs where we have a lot of opportunity to grow philanthropic support. We then work through some criteria around a fund agreement. So that might look like a student has to have a certain GPA and have financial need if it's a scholarship. It might look like the funding can be used for supporting student organization if it's a programmatic fund. So depending on the fund, we'll have those conversations. We'll talk about the giving vehicle. Are they giving a cash gift? Do they want to give stock? Do they want to give a CRUT, which is a charitable remainder unit trust, which is tied into planned giving? And then we work on a gift agreement. So the fundraisers will work to craft the criteria. Jonathan will make sure that everything we are working on checks every box from a legal perspective, and that we work together to make sure it's actually awardable, because that is the one thing we want to avoid. And frankly, donors want to avoid it too. So when we go down a gift agreement, and if it's too specific and it will never be awarded, that's part of the hard conversations too, is to explain why that is going to be a challenge. Once we get the gifts signed and ready to go, we then have to focus in on the stewardship. How are we going to keep these donors connected? How are we going to thank them? What touch points do they want? And how do we make sure that they're not giving a gift and then falling through the cracks? So there are a lot of things from the entire donor continuum that we really have to look at.
It leads me to my question is, like, I know that we have one scholarship here at WEIU. We award either 1, 2, or 3 students every in the spring, and we had to award it to the students. Now, do you notify the donor who those kids are every year? I would call them kids, but who those students are every year? I don't know how that I should probably know that, but it just come to think of me. I didn't know if you were back ending on that.
We do. We actually do stewardship. So when the students go out to accept the award, they answer some questions about themselves, and often we'll provide a photo, maybe a video message to the donor.
Okay.
And then we have our stewardship director, Nancy Murray, that actually sends that material out to our donors.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Do you guys, when you know you're going into, I call it a client meeting or a donor meeting, and you know it's potentially big dollars,
Yeah.
Are the nerves going? I mean, talk about that. If you know you're going into somebody that's going to give Eastern $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, what's going through your mind?
Well, if we know they're giving it, that's easier.
Okay, good. Smart answer.
Right.
They potentially could give you. What's going through your mind?
So I used to get nervous. One of the pieces of advice that someone gave to me early on that I give to newer fundraisers is, you're not asking for money for you. And I think if you change your mindset and think through, you really are the concierge for this donor. You really are the intermediary between making what they want to have happen impact the university. It changes the dynamic. So if you go in with the right mindset, and that really, you're not asking for money for you, you're helping your institution, it is okay to just ask right away, is EIU in your estate plans? And if it is, great, let's get that documented. And focusing in on, it's helping recognize donors today for the impact they're going to make either today or in the future. I think changing your mindset takes those nerves away.
Would you like to add anything, Jonathan?
Well, I think there is some maybe trepidation on my part, but it's offset by the fact that in many of these cases we've worked with the donors and we know them. We've develop relationships, and that's what we do. We're in the relationship business. So when we are sitting down with them, it's really a conversation, and it's usually the nerves quickly fade away, and we talk about what the needs are at the institution and what the hopes are that the donor has.
Are the majority of the donors to Eastern alum, or are there other people that just have ties because they grew up in the Charleston-Mattoon area? Do you know?
It is across the board. We have a very dedicated group of former faculty and staff, annuitants of the university that give back very strongly, parents of current students, alumni, current faculty and staff. It is a variety of folks, and every gift is appreciated.
Okay.
Yeah, community members,
Yep.
business owners.
And there's got to be some tax benefits to giving to an institution like Eastern.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that?
So yes, there is a tax benefit. It changes depending on your level and the current taxation laws. And what we always tell people is, we cannot offer tax advice. Please talk to your tax professional.
So it's another great answer. What about when you talked about how people can give and what they give? There's also the Bitcoin and all these other different types of whatever you want to call them out there. Is Eastern accepting that right now? Or are you still mostly in the money and or stock, or like I said, endowment area?
Most of the donors are giving more traditional ways. So
Yeah.
they're giving through, for instance, a mandatory distribution from an IRA account. They may have a donor advised fund. That's a new and growing area of giving. But a lot of people just write the traditional check, go out and make a credit card gift. I have not really worked with any donor specifically on a Bitcoin transfer. I mean, we would certainly work with them any way we can to help facilitate that.
Okay.
But those are very niche areas,
Yeah.
but we will work with any donor that we can to help realize that.
Okay. Okay.
Say, we have a lot of people listening, of course. I want to take this time to really have an opportunity for people to understand why it's important to donate. So, is there a message you would like to share with current students and recent graduates about the importance of giving back to the university?
Ooh, a pitch, a sales pitch. I like that.
That is a great question. So, EIU does a lot to change the lives of our students and our alumni. And we just came out of homecoming where we heard those stories repeatedly. The impact EIU made on individuals who are alums. We heard it from donors who are not alumni and how much EIU has meant to them. The transformative powers of higher education, how that can change the entire trajectory of not just a person, but their entire family. Giving back is an important way to recognize the impact of the institution. Small gifts, every gift matters. We were actually talking Friday in some of our alumni board meetings about the impact of everyday donors. Giving a gift of $5, it used to be, you can just, instead of buying a cup of coffee, give a $5 gift. Everyday donors want to actually understand the impact that is being made. So giving back is important, whether it is a small gift or whether it is a big gift. A big part of our work, though, is then explaining to those everyday donors, whether it's a $5 gift or an estate gift, what is the impact going to be of your philanthropy? So we are working on new processes and new impact reporting and new storytelling to really strengthen that message for everyday donors, and they might be young alums or students, but they might be even older alums, about why giving $100 every month can be transformative. $10 a month is also great.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Would you like to add, Jonathan?
Yeah, well, Mindy mentioned the impact that Eastern has had on the lives of our graduates and that it makes an impact on families. Both my parents graduated from Eastern. I can count probably 14 or 15 relatives that have all hold degrees from Eastern. I'm a proud graduate. This has been my life work for 21 years at Eastern. So we make a difference in the lives of our students and our community, and it's important to give back, and that message resonates with donors, and they want to step up.
Going back to the fund drive that will happen, the major fund drive here over the next few years when you start. Now, will you go to each department and kind of get, like we used to call this, a wish list of things that they would love to see funded for, like for some reason, I'm a sports guy. Lights at the baseball stadium. I mean, we've never had lights out there forever. Is that like on a list? So if you have a good matchup, if you're sitting there with a donor, like, oh, they think this would be a good matchup, or how does that work?
Yeah, so there's a lot of work we need to do on that front, and we have started working on that. So let's pick one of our themes. One of our themes is going to be around student success and experience. So how do we help students be successful in the classroom and outside of the classroom?
Okay.
So what part of that work will look like is not just understanding at the university level that we might want funding to help all faculty with their skills and their professional development, because successful faculty are successful students. It might look like more experiential learning spaces. It might look like we want to do some improvements in a residence hall. Whatever that looks like, in or outside the classroom, we'll have those themes and those priorities set at the university level. But then, yes, we will drill down to the colleges and to the departments and start talking through what are their needs. Because what we might need at the high level, there will be some alignment underneath at the colleges, but experiential learning spaces, for example, might look different in a humanities department in CLAS versus Lumpkin School of Technology. So having a great understanding of those needs is going to be important. Part of that work will also look like, and I talked a lot about this with our different alumni boards on Friday, having one-sheeters available and having a toolkit available, not just for our fundraisers, so that we all have some cross-training, because we've been talking about that a lot in our advancement staff meetings, is we want people to have broad cross-training, so that if someone talks about wanting to give to the School of Technology, but also to WEIU, every fundraiser, every advancement professional has a good understanding of the needs. And if they don't understand the needs, they'll have a toolkit they can go to understand more. But that also then translates to our colleagues across the university, in the colleges and the departments, but also our alumni and volunteer boards, which does include our foundation board. So we'll be doing a lot of professional development as well to help everyone get campaign ready.
So, have there been any challenges the foundation's faced in its efforts to raise funds and support the university?
Oh gosh, I think that there's always a challenge of sustaining relationships with folks. The university's evolved and changed over the years. We have folks who have been valued colleagues and partners in our work, and they transition on to retirement and other opportunities. So it's building that consistency into our operations so that the donors continue to have those connections through our team. That's probably one of the most important things that we endeavor to do.
Are there other naming rights and naming for buildings and places that are available right now?
Yeah, there will be. I'm happy to talk to any donor that is interested. Working through naming rights and how we set those giving levels is actually an active project I have right now. We want to make sure that when we're asking someone for a donation, it is not just a random arbitrary dollar amount. We want to make sure it's actually going to support what they're giving to. So, for example, it might be a lab space. We want to make sure that the donor is providing philanthropic support to help fund the equipment in the space, or if we need new furniture in the space. Technology is often overlooked in the advancement world, but I want to make sure we include technology because we want to have projectors that work, and we want to have screens that are not broken, and that part of the experience is really important for our students, our faculty, and our visitors to campus. So yes, we will have comprehensive naming rights, and we will have it set based on the space and the needs of that unit.
Now, do you have to work with the athletic department on like name, image, and likeness, which has kind of hit the world the last 18 months, or is that something that they handle and you just have to maybe service, for lack of a better way to say it?
Yeah, we're not doing any work on the name, image, likeness side. Athletics is handling all of that.
What's the best part of your job, Jonathan?
Oh gosh, I'm reminded of that just last weekend, having come from homecoming. You walk into the room and you see dozens and dozens of people that you've had the privilege of knowing and working with, some of whom are faculty that taught me in the classroom when I was at Eastern. They're folks that I see every day, and I think that's the most fulfilling part of this job, is just those connections and being around people.
I mean, I know you've only been here 8 months, but I mean, right now?
I love helping people make their either philanthropic or volunteerism dreams come true. I also really love data. So I tell people I'm a huge data nerd, and a modern advancement enterprise has to be very data driven. So we're working on a new database. That's fun. We're really looking at where the distribution of our alumni and where we should be doing engagement events. That's fun. I also really love helping other advancement professionals shine and find fulfillment in their career. We have fun jobs, right? There's a lot of stress that can come with them because we do need to focus in on improving the philanthropic impact to the university. But at the end of the day, we really are helping dreams come true and really impacting our students and everyone on campus. So there's a lot of fulfillment that comes with that.
Okay. A few minutes left today with Mindy and Jonathan. Katie, any final questions from you?
I was going to say, how important is community involvement and support to the foundation's mission to you guys? Just really emphasizing that, because I really like to put a communication lens on everything and just noticing that it's important, So how important is community involvement necessarily?
Extremely important, both here locally and when you think of the community of a university, it's local. It might be corporations and foundations and those who are giving and impacting in different types of ways. Jonathan mentioned parents. Parents are an important part of the community. And then the traditional alumni and donors. Faculty and staff are an important part of the community too. So really the communication side and being able to tell the stories and telling people the impact of our work, it's critical. We can't do it without the community.
Of course.
How do either of you deal with any conflict if there's an issue with a donor or something? Do you just meet them head on, or you try to invite them over, or do you go see them, or
Yeah, I think it depends on what the circumstance, what the situation is. I want to fully understand, if it's a matter of maybe a misunderstanding of criteria on an award. I want to have a better understanding of that and then engage the donor, follow up with the awarding agent on campus and see what exactly we need to do. But it's really more of just a head-on, have the conversation, understand what the concerns are and address them.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a ton more to add than that. It's just having open, honest, transparent conversations. And there might be times where you're never going to find complete resolution. And that's part of life, right? We don't always have complete resolution on everything. But I have found that sometimes if someone is upset, and it might not be anything with their gift, we will also hear general concerns and frustrations people might have with the institution. Being a listening board, and Jonathan talked about a lot of our work is relationship building. That's part of what you do in a relationship, right? You talk through things and navigate those challenges, and just letting them know they're heard and that you understand, and when possible, try and find resolution. That goes a long way.
We're about out of time. I always also heard the problem's not going to go away unless it is addressed. So I like both those answers. Any other thing, real quick, that people want to know about Mindy or Jonathan or the advancement office?
I wouldn't be doing my job well if I didn't mention listeners can also impact WEIU. We do support WEIU through our work, and people can leave estate gifts to WEIU. So always feel free to reach out, and we're happy to help people's dreams come true.
Well, thank you, Mindy. Thank you, Jonathan.
You're welcome.
Any last words, Jonathan? You have anything?
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Well, we'll be back next week. Appreciate Mindy and Jonathan, and hope you learned something today. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you very much.
We are WEIU.
Thank you.